Hi everyone, thanks for joining. Today I am speaking with Katharine Birbalsingh. Katharine is the head of the Michaela School in London, and they just had their the results come out from I guess your first class that did the your final examinations for graduating high school. I think that's what there was, and they're all phenomenal. Um, and first of all, thank you very much for coming on, and secondly, congratulations on all that. Um,
Thank you.
and I was just hoping, because I'm really curious, how this all started, and
Uh-huh.
and then what led you to do this, and then if you could talk a bit about your school, and then we could go from there.
Yes, sure. So we opened in 2014 with 120 year sevens. Free schools in England are what the US call charter schools. Now, charter schools have been around for 20, 30 years in the US. They've only been around since 2010 in England, free schools. And they give people, ordinary people, the opportunity to set up their own school. So as a teacher, you could get together a bunch of other people and you have to tick off certain boxes. You need a project manager, you need a lawyer, you need various people. But once you've got that together, you go for an interview at the Department for Education and then you can set up a school. And that is essentially what we did. But it did take us 3 years to set this up. We opened in 2014, and every year we've been taking in a new year 7 or grade 7, as you would say, and we're now all the way up to grade 12, and then we'll have grade 13 next year, so we'll be full. Yeah, the kids, it's all going really well, really. I mean, we see what's really fascinating about the whole free school movement is that it allows teachers to do things that they think are right. They're not just doing the same thing that's always been done. Well, some of them might be, but it gives you the opportunity to change things if you want to. And we have done that. So we are very much about having high standards of discipline and teaching from the front of the class. Now, your listeners might think, well, what do you mean teaching from the front of the class? Where else would you teach from? Well, nowadays, I'd say for the last maybe 30, 40 years, teaching has gradually become more of a profession you're more of a facilitator of learning. So what I mean by that is the desks are in groups and the children are looking at each other and the teacher moves amongst the desks, keeping the children on task. And it's the children who are leading their own learning and discovering that learning for themselves. We don't do that. We are a lot more old-fashioned. The teacher stands at the front of the class and leads the learning. I always say the teacher needs to be driving the bus, and the children are on the bus, and the teacher decides where the bus is going. In a classroom with group desks, it's not the teacher who decides where they're going, it's the children who decide. And that's very different. What we're doing now is very different to what takes place in most schools in 2019. And we find that the results are remarkable, really. I think what used to be done 50, 60 years ago was the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I was okay. I went through the public education system in Canada, and that was in the 70s, and it was as you were describing, teachers at the front of the classroom. Obviously there's group projects and stuff like that, but it was also very focused on, I was looking at your curriculum, and it's it's very straightforward. It's when you're doing maths, you're doing maths. And I mean, I see some of the stuff in the United States and even some in Canada, and they're injecting all kinds of other things, and I don't know. I mean, I understand.
Yeah, well, so when you're talking about the group where you say, oh, we did group work and so on, that was the beginning. Okay, so in the 1970s, you might do a little bit of group work, and it wasn't such a big deal. 1980s, you were doing a lot more of that. By the time you get to 2019, the teacher is feeling bad if she teaches them anything and stands at the front of the class and leads. What would be better is for her to give them some stuff to do in these groups and for them to continue on their own and go off in different directions. So different groups will be doing different things, and sometimes children are getting out of their chairs and wandering around the classroom deliberately and sticking post-it notes on each other's foreheads or around the room, and playing all sorts of games and so on. And the idea is that, I suppose, that you're making it more relevant to them and more engaging. But our position is very much that the subject itself should be engaging, and that it's the job of the teacher to make the subject interesting enough. And that doesn't mean dumbing it down. That doesn't mean having the children jump around and be silly with the subject. It means giving them so much information about the subject and teaching them so well so that they find it interesting. You will find something interesting if you know a lot about it, right?
Oh, no. 100%.
Yeah. Yeah, but well, you say that, but I mean that what I just said is really quite controversial in 2019.
Okay, that's what I don't understand. I mean, your school so far is showing great success, and it seems like you're being criticized for being successful.
No, I mean, I don't think they're criticizing us for being successful. I think that they don't believe that the success is important, so they don't say, oh, well, I thought that school was not, I didn't like the methods that they used, but now that I can see how much success they have, I'm now going to change my mind, because they are ideologues, and so they're not going to change their minds when the evidence shows that they're wrong. So they will change the goalposts. So originally they might have said, we don't like the school because children can't possibly learn with the teacher leading from the front. Then we come out with great exam results, and then they say, oh, no, but exam results aren't important. What's important is that children, learn soft skills. But then they'll come in and they'll see, oh, well, look, actually, the children are doing family dining here and learning how to shake hands and look at someone in the eye, and they're learning how to give appreciations to large numbers of people at once and be grateful. And so actually, Michaela really does develop the whole child. Oh gosh, okay, no, we still don't like it. Why don't we like it? Oh, it's because you have silent corridors, and that means you're oppressing children. Now, I would say that having silent corridors is wonderful because it means they move very quickly to their lessons. No one gets punched in the face. Nobody gets bullied or shouted at. The lesson isn't disrupted by latecomers. It's wonderful. Now, they don't like it, and they'll just insist on it. They'll just say it is de facto a bad thing. I'm saying it's clearly a good thing because look how happy the children are. But I mean, ultimately, look, there's lots of people who have been convinced, lots of visitors here. I was just speaking to a couple of visitors downstairs who were saying, a head teacher from a primary school and one of her teachers, she was saying she'd be taking back a lot of ideas that she picked up here and using them in her school. And we find that all over, actually, that there are schools everywhere, from Canada even, who come here and take ideas back to their schools, which is wonderful.
Yeah, no, I mean, as far as I can tell from, reading about your school and reading about the success, everything's working, and I think it's great. I think a lot of people, they're confusing things, you talk about discipline, and automatically they think it's got to be something draconian and really harsh and brutal, but discipline doesn't have to be that, and
no,
I think kids need that.
Discipline is just clarity. Children have agency. That's the key thing that we need to remember. Children choose to behave in different ways. It is not the case, and we patronize them to suggest that they can't choose. They can. And you just need to be clear. If you do the right thing, you'll be rewarded. And if you do the wrong thing, you'll be punished. Now, what's the punishment? A 20-minute detention. Whoop-de-doo. I mean, come on. Is it the end of the world? You do your detention and off you go. But what it does is it allows the child to make a choice. And then he knows that there are consequences to his behavior. And that's that,
No, I mean, that's... I have no problem with that.
Mm-hmm.
Like that, but that's what it should be. There is clear, defined lines. Because yes, I agree with you that children, we shouldn't coddle them or anything like that. And at the same time, but if you give them clearly defined lines, they know where you stand, and they, they might try to, children are going to be children to some extent. And they might try to push it or whatever. But if they know what the limits are, they'll kind of stay in them.
Yes.
But some of the things, there was just one, it's just something that was recent, and it was, you put it out, and I agreed with you when you said there, back up the teacher, don't always listen to what your child says. Mm-hmm. Now, I think a lot of people took that to mean that, oh, well, if my child comes home I mean, I know some people took it to this extreme, like bruised and battered, like I shouldn't say anything. It's like,
Well,
that's
that's
not...
just idiotic, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
clearly. I mean, and these people are just looking to be idiotic. I mean, that's just stupid. I mean, obviously, well, I wouldn't be saying that. I mean, and if you want to insist that I'm saying that, well, then you have a problem. I mean, there's just something wrong. I'm talking about the everyday misdemeanors that children do. Oh, I got detention. Oh, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. It was him. I mean, they say it 100 times a day.
Yeah, okay.
You know, and when they do that, as a parent, you need to go, oh, you know what? I don't believe you, right? Go and do your detention, as opposed to marching into the school and saying, oh, you've given my child a detention. You obviously hate my child. No, the teacher doesn't hate your child. In fact, if your teacher hated your child, then they wouldn't bother giving them a detention. They would just let them be rubbish, right? The whole point is they love them enough to give them a detention to help them become better people. And all parents should be praying that they have teachers who give their child a detention. Because that's what any good head teacher wants their teachers giving the children detentions. And if you have teachers who don't give children detentions, you will have chaos in your school. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
I mean, and the thing is that you might want to take that advice. I mean, it's just advice of mine. You know, and at the end of the day, if you insist on making sure your child doesn't have the right kind of structure by him at home, because that's what this is. It's structure and expectations that I hope parents should give their children. If you as a parent don't want to give them that, well, there's not much I can do about that. I mean, that's for you to decide. But, you know,
well,
I hope...
On that note, it was just something from when I was a kid. I think I was in the 3rd grade, and I'd done something stupid, and the teacher gave me lines. It said, okay, go home, 200 times, write, I can't remember what it was, like I won't be late or something.
Yes.
And my mother saw me doing this, and she said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I was late, so I got to do this. Okay, now, first of all, she was like, she's like, why were you late to class? You shouldn't be late. She completely said that. And then she looked at the lines, she's like, this is stupid. She goes, do the lines. And then she got me to write out a couple of paragraphs on why it's wrong to be late. And then she wrote at the bottom of that to my teacher. She's like, my son was wrong. I agree with you that, he did something wrong. And, I've spoken to him about it. And, he shouldn't be late. And she's like, in future, if he does something wrong, instead of giving him lines, which is useless, maybe give him something like this. Now, I don't know if you agree with that or not, but like my mom.
Well, what I would say is what would have been better is for her to have done that privately. So for her to have written to the, I mean, obviously in those days there was no email, but nowadays you would email the teacher or email the school and just say, hey, how about, I've got a great idea. Thanks so much, Miss So-and-so, for disciplining my child. He's really naughty. He shouldn't have been late. And I'm so grateful that you caught him on that. Thank you very much. I wonder whether you might like the idea of, instead of setting children lines, getting them to write out the reason why they're, what they did wrong or whatever it is, right? Now, the thing is, it's possible the teacher might say, great idea, but actually I'll tell you why we do lines instead. Because, and I can give you a whole host of reasons why your mum's idea is not necessarily the best one. Because there are some children who won't be able to write the reasons, what they've learned from it, unless they have a mum who's standing over them, helping them with that. Now, you did have a mum who was helping you with it and helped you write your reasons for what you've learned from this and so on. Many children don't have that. And then they don't know what to write. And then they turn up the next morning and they haven't done their lines. The thing that's great about lines, now I have to say we don't do lines, and we don't do lines for similar reasons as to what your mother thought. We would do work that's sort of like homework. But the fact is that what's great about lines is you can give a number, you can be really clear about what you want, and then when they come in the next day, I mean, again, we wouldn't send lines home. I mean, I think that's a bit silly. But, if they were at the end of the detention, you can then see, have you actually worked? Have you done the work that I've asked you to do or not? And it's just very easy to be able to tick that off. So, you see, your mum, in that instance, because she's not a teacher, is not thinking like a teacher has to think when you have 200 kids that you're having to deal with, and you're trying to find a system that works. All your mother was thinking about was her boy in that particular situation with her as your mum who could help him. And in that one instance, she was absolutely right. It was better for you to write about why you shouldn't be late. But that might not be the right system for the school. And in fact, it's really great that you've given that example, because often people think that because they've been to school that they know how to run a school, and they don't. And neither do they know how to teach. Nobody thinks because they visited a hospital that they know how to do surgery. And I wouldn't dare go into a surgery, into an operating theater and tell the surgeon how to do his surgery. I just wouldn't do it. And yet, people regularly tell teachers how to do their jobs. And that's because they think because they've been to school they know just as much as the teacher, and they don't. Now, that doesn't mean they can't come up with an idea that might be of use. Fine. But that's why I say if she'd written and said, look, thank you so much for what you're doing. I'm really grateful. I wonder what you might think of this idea. Maybe it's a silly idea, but I thought I'd throw it out there anyway. She's showing humility and saying, look, actually, I know I don't know anything about teaching, but hey, maybe my idea might be a good one. She's also showing gratitude for what the teacher has done for her child. And she's behaving in a way that is appropriate. The problem with her writing that on your sheet and sending you in with that is that she's telling her son, you know what, I think your teacher's a bit stupid. And the problem with doing that is that if the child, now you might have been quite a good child, because actually you're saying you admitted what you did. So, which already tells me that you were a child who was happy to tell your mom, look, I got something wrong, which is really commendable, But if, let's say you're not, or even you as the good kid, your mom's saying, you know what, your teacher's just a bit dim here. She's giving you something to do which is a bit stupid. So when your teacher asks you to do something the next time, like do a piece of homework, or she teaches you something in the lesson, you as a child will be thinking, well, does my teacher know what she's talking about? Is she that bright? I don't know, because my mom told me that she's not very clever. Do you see? It undermines that trust and respect that the child should have for their teacher. Now, look, your mother's a good woman. I'm not saying she's a bad person. She just doesn't know. Nobody's told her, look, don't undermine the teacher, because otherwise you're actually undermining your child. So that's what I was doing. I wrote an article yesterday in the Telegraph to come out today saying, parents, listen to me. I'm giving you advice here. Take it or leave it, but this is great advice, because in the end, you want your child to learn from their teacher. And if you undermine the position of authority that teacher has, your child is going to learn far less from that teacher.
Okay, no, that makes sense. Like I said, again, this was something from the mid-'70s, so it was something along those lines. My memories obviously got to it's fuzzy from back then.
But it's a great example. Yeah. Great example. Kind of thing that happens all the time. 70s, 80s, 90s, nowadays, kind of thing that happens all the time. Except, to be honest, nowadays it's far worse. You've got parents marching into schools saying, I'm going to get that teacher, and who was he to tell my child, blah, 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 and so on, And there's real kind of aggression and anger coming from parents, which is horrifying. And their child sees them behaving this way. I've even had children who come in and are apologizing for their parents' behavior. Children who are so embarrassed by their parents that they know that their parent is in the wrong. It's awful. It's just awful. It's just awful that their parents are embarrassing them in this way.
Oh no, okay, and I should say, like, my parents, that was, like, I gave you that one example, but parent-teacher meetings or whatever, if the teacher gave me praise, that was, you did a good job, great. And if the teacher, like, there were times or classes I didn't do well in or whatever, and the teacher said, and my parents were doubly like, nope, you're gonna have to, like, double down, and you did this. Like, there was never that, like, okay, the teacher's wrong, you're right. It was always, okay, the teacher's telling us something, you're failing in this, or you're falling behind in this, but you're doing great there. So there was never, okay, we're gonna take your side over the teacher. Again, maybe that was, that I also, I think, had to do with my mom. Like, she grew up in Pakistan, she went to school there, and she thought that was, and maybe that's where she came from, I don't know. But yeah.
Well, also it was the 1970s.
Yeah.
So the culture wasn't one of, telling teachers off and so on and so forth. Whereas nowadays, there is that culture. They don't trust the teachers, and that's a real shame. It's a real shame.
I wanted to just get back to your curriculum because I'm looking at the curriculum you're doing, and I'm looking at on your webpage, and I hear you talking about that stuff. And I have friends here who are teachers, mainly like younger kids, from like kindergarten to grade 3. But everything seems to be focused on, and more so in the States and Canada, but it's all focused on these tests. Like you have to do these tests every so often. Kids take an insane amount of tests throughout the year, and I don't mean like quizzes in class. You've read a book, and for English class you can take a quiz on that. I mean, it's just like these standardized tests over and over and over again. So everything seems to be focused towards getting the answer, where you kind of seem to be focused more on the methodology and like yes, you get the right answer, but how do you get the answer, and like why does this work like that? And it's
Well, the thing is, I mean, I don't know how often the tests take place. I have to say that testing often gets a bad reputation, and it shouldn't do. Testing isn't bad. Testing is a good thing because it allows a teacher to see how much the child has learned. And it's not just a child, it's the whole cohort, and see how much they've learned. And then they might see a pattern. Oh, look, number 3 on the test, everybody's getting wrong. Well, clearly, we haven't taught that properly. Something's gone wrong there. So testing is a very good thing. The reason why you think it's a bad thing, and people often do, is because they think that people, and it can happen, that people are teaching to the test. And what that means is, instead of just teaching children things they need to know, the teacher goes to the test and thinks, well, what's going to come up on the test? Right, I'm going to teach them this, because it's on the test, as opposed to I'm going to teach them stuff they need to know. When what ought to be happening is you teach them stuff that they need to know, and it so happens that they also have a test, and they look at it, they do the test, and some of the stuff that they know comes up, and maybe some stuff they didn't know comes up, rather than having just been taught to the test. That and that kind of incentive to teach to the test comes from league tables. So what I mean by league tables is schools being judged according to how well they've done in those results. And that, of course, just gives schools an enormous incentive to just teach to the test, because who cares about anything else? All that matters is the kids knowing what's on the test, because all that matters is how the school comes across, that is a difficult balance to get.
Yeah, but that's the issue in a lot of the schools in the States, the public system anyways, and it's some of the ones in Canada than the public system. It's if you do well on these tests, if you do well on these scores, more help with budget, blah blah blah. You're doing better, so you'll get more resources. So that's what they're doing. They're okay. We have to get good marks on these tests, so they're focused on just doing that. And they're standardized tests, so you can't, like, if it's a math quiz, where you can show your work and you can go through that. It's just multiple choice, pick an answer, right? It's just
okay. So, and it depends on the quality of the test, right? So, if the test is such poor quality that you can just teach to it, right? Then that's a bad test. If you have a good quality test and it's impossible to just teach to the test, and they actually have to be able to master certain skills, then that's a good test, and that's what you want to be using. Now, of course, I don't know what these tests look like, so it's hard for me to comment. But multiple choice isn't always bad. As long as the detractors, meaning the options, so there's the option that's correct, and then there's the options. You should always have 5 options, and of the options that aren't correct, those detractors, they have to be incorrect in ways that would make the child think. So, what year is it? 2019, or is it 1941, or is it 1854? Well, it's pretty easy. It's 2019. I suppose, imagine you're doing this for 4-year-olds. Well, is it 2019 or 2018 or 2017 or 2020? Perhaps then they have to pause and think, oh gosh, well, which one is it? Obviously, what I'm saying is the detractors have to make the child think in that moment, right? It can't be obvious. So it all depends on the quality of the test. And I can't comment because I don't know about what the content is of the test.
Yeah, I mean, again, I'm speaking to people, and I'm getting what they're saying, and then they do news reports and stuff on that as well. But granted, you have to take everything like that with a grain of salt. But
yes, you do.
But But I mean, even here, like, some charter schools do great, and they talk about those, and it's always something that's like what you're doing. It's not the standard, here's the cookie cutter approach from the government. Follow this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which, I mean, I think your approach will work, but obviously, if it's a school in southern United States, they might have to tailor certain things slightly differently than what you're doing. But like the core of what you're doing, I think would pretty much work anywhere.
Yeah, definitely would. Definitely.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, go on.
No, I was looking, like, one of the things you kind of focus on your website is preparing the kids to go to any university, like to be ready to go to any university that they want, or if they want to go on to something else, right? Like if they want to go into trades, or whatever they want to do. So, and that's one of the issues I see here. I don't know so much about the UK. Is, we have to fix how people are getting into university, and you'll hear
why. What do you mean? What's wrong with them?
Well, okay, okay, if you heard about the thing in Harvard where they were skewing the SAT results and like things like that. Now, in my mind, what you're doing is the right thing. Okay, prepare the people properly so that when they have the skills to be able to go anywhere. Whereas if you, at the end of it, if you let someone in who's not quite prepared, but you're like, okay, well, because of whatever reason you don't have the skills, but you might be good enough, so we'll let you in, and that person ends up failing. I mean, I think that's the complete wrong way of going about it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look, first of all, not everybody needs to go to university.
Yeah.
It depends on whether it's the right thing for you. Secondly, you've got to find the right course for you, and so on. It all depends. I understand in Canada that you get kind of marks from your teachers, and that's it. There are no national exams, are there?
Oh, there is.
Are there
yeah, you have to take, and it changes province to province. Quebec's slightly different because we have a weird system here, but there is federal and provincial final exams, and
right.
So you have to. Okay. So they take those results. So let's say your graduating year, you'll always be accepted provisionally, depending on how you do on your finals. So, and then they usually take the finals from grade 9, 10, and 11. Quebec high school goes to grade 11, so they go grade 9, 10, 11, and then those are the results.
And the exams that you're taking, the finals, they are what? They are made by whom?
They're made by the government.
Oh, I see.
And
okay.
Right. Like I said, there's some that are provincial level, some that are federal level, and these are government exams. And so, okay, again, going back to, like, this for me, it's like the late 80s. If we're doing the final exam in trigonometry, right? So it was, yes, multiple choice, but they give you scratch paper, and you have to show your work. You can't just say, well,
okay.
Yeah, this is the answer, but you can guess and get it right. But if you don't show your work, it doesn't really count. So that was a kind of thing. And but they still have that. They still have those kind of exams, and you have to those. It's not like in the States where you have the SATs. They have that for like law school and medical school. Here, you still have to take those exams, like the LSATs and the MCATs. But it's just government issued final exams and it's not it's for chemistry, maths, physics, English.
Yes.
And French. In Quebec was French.
Yes. Yes. Well, that's good. Is that not good? You don't think that's good?
Okay, look, final exams are great. They're like exams like that. And like I said, we had teachers. One of my favorite teachers in high school, our history teacher in grade 10, we had a quiz every week. We had a test every second week. But it was, this week we're studying. It was Canadian history, so we're studying this chapter, which is discussing this. So there'll be a quiz on that. There'll be a big test next week on these two chapters, and it was focused on learning that, and it was little small essay, like paragraph essay questions and things like that. Whereas the standardized testing now, from what it seems to me, is just they're focusing on just getting you to get the right answer because there's so many of them, and a lot of stuff is based on how well the students in that school do on those tests. which, I mean, there's like I said, a quiz every week and a test every second week. That's, some people might think that's a lot of testing, but it was studying the material and getting to know the material.
Yeah, that's a different. So assessments have different purposes. So those assessments that are taking place every week are helping the teacher check to make sure that everybody's learned what you've been learning that week. And so it checks. Oh, I need to redo this bit. I need to redo that bit. Oh, they didn't understand this, etc. That's what that assessment's doing. The assessment that you're taking, your finals, as you say, it's called finals because it's at the end, and it's assessing whether or not you've reached a certain standard to get into university. So it has a very different purpose to the assessments that are happening every week. Yeah. Do you see?
Oh, no, I get that. And like we used to have midterm and final exams, and the midterms were weighted, I think it's 60 on the finals, 40 on the midterms. So that's kind of how it was weighted. And I have no issue with that. Like, you need something like that. You need some sort of thing like that. But it's just like these standardized tests, I'd have to go back and look at the numbers, but it was some ridiculous amount that these kids were doing.
Right.
And
what do you mean? You mean to practice?
No. Like they were having to take, a test, like let's say once a month, a standardized government test type of thing. And
yeah, well, that's a bit weird. I mean, I don't really understand that.
Yeah, like, I mean, like it is not just a midterm and a final. It was all the way through, and it's that's where I'm like with the standardized testing. That's where I think it's wrong. The testing, like quizzes in class, revision, doing your homework, all that kind of stuff. That you need that so the teacher, like you said, the teacher can see how an individual student in that one class is doing. But you need the midterms, you need the finals. I mean, I don't. Anyone who says you don't, I don't know where you could come up with proof that you don't. But
yes,
I'm not in that field, so.
Yes. Okay. Well, well, great. Well, any other?
No, I'm just thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for talking to me. I was going to say, like, I heard that there's a couple other schools that are going to copy your model, like in the UK. Do you have anything else, like future plans?
I mean, people take ideas all the time, and we are going to open up a second school just outside of London. So you'll have to watch the space, but it's going to take a bit of time. But people are always using our methods. As I say, even in Canada, people take some of our methods. So, that's exciting. And the key thing is that, teachers should be leading from the front. You need to have high standards of behavior, follow through on everything. And the parents need to buy into that. I mean, my position is always, if parents don't like what we're doing, then we're not the right school for them, And you might want to go somewhere where you do more group work. But I do think your child won't learn as much, that's all. But some people might not mind that. Some people say, I don't care. I'd rather they learn less. And that's fine. I mean, it's a free country. People need to be able to do what they want. We have a... what we're doing is exciting, and a lot of people buy into it and love it. And that's the main thing, really. Yeah?
Well, again, congratulations to your staff and your students. And thank you very much. And
okay.
Thank you, everyone, for listening.
Thank you.